Hi, hello everyone. This is Mohit here, and I am from Master of Growth, a podcast by growth leaders for the startup and business community. And I'm the host today, and we have Anurag from Rightbot Technologies with us today. Rightbot is a warehouse automation tech product, and they've been funded by a good series of investors. So great to have the next 20-25 minute session with Anurag, and I'll start up with the questions. So Anurag, just a brief intro about yourself and Rightbot in your special words for your enterprise.
Sure. So I myself, I have over a decade of corporate experience. I'm an engineer, then an MBA from Ahmedabad. I've been a consultant. I've worked in the chairman's office. I have built a beer business. I have run a craft beer business. So a lot of corporate experience. So post that, kind of the entrepreneurship bug bit. And I came across this program called Entrepreneur First, which helps you find co-founders if you're looking to kind of set up deep tech startups. And that's where I and my co-founder Abhinav, we started Rightbot Technologies. Our journey has been an interesting one, but right now, if I were to describe what we are doing in terms of the specific use case, in terms of specific solution, so we build robotic dark stores to supercharge quick commerce. So that's the one liner, right? And if I were to kind of go one level deeper, so today when consumers are ordering their groceries in 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, there is always a dark store which is located somewhere close by, which is essential for those goods to reach you quickly. Now, these dark stores are highly manpower intensive. People there are running around, they're falling over each other, and they are in dire need for efficiency and productivity improvement. That is what we provide through a robotic fulfillment solution, which can really impact bottom line productivity and efficiency for quick commerce customers.
Great. I think you are the back end of the hype which is going on around almost entire India or entire world, because with the advent of 10 minutes, everything is just getting on to 10 minutes. Like before we had Uber for X, and now we have 10 minutes for X. So
Right.
On the front of how you started up with this, was this something which you found out on your corporate journey, or you found this problem statement at EF, or how did this occur to you in terms of
So this particular problem statement was actually post a couple of pivots in our last 2 years. So I and Abhinav, when we came together, so he's the roboticist with robotics in supply chain. I'm the commercial product P&L person with good operations and supply chain experience. So we kind of got started saying, why not build a made in India for the world robotics company, right? Because the adoption in emerging economies is very less. If we can solve for these economies, it would. So then we started off on that journey. We pivoted a few times, made multiple prototypes. And I think during that process, really understood the usage of robotics for fulfillment space very deeply. And then when quick commerce essentially became the fad word, right? What we realized is in this particular category, there is this one space, which is dark stores, which possibly needs automation more than any other space in the whole warehouse, in the whole fulfillment space. And the other is a white space when it comes to solutions. So we kind of decided, okay, seems to be the right thing at the right time. And we kind of started this particular use case journey, I would say around 9 to 10 months back.
Wow. So yeah, I think quick commerce, of course, needs a lot of efficiency. On the front of you growing, so of course you met and created a team at Entrepreneur First and started with warehouse automation. As a market, did you ever think that robotics could be an Indian play, or you were just focused on outside India? Because robotics selling in India is like I've met a couple of people and they have not had a good say of selling robotics in India. Especially the only part which looks good is on the TV, Modi asking some bot how is it, and that's the only commercial use case found. So just your views
Right.
on what you're
So,
thinking.
if you look globally, right, and when I talk supply chain robotics, not manufacturing robotics, because manufacturing robotics is a bit different. Supply chain robotics is largely about efficiency improvement. It's not about quality improvement per se, to a large extent. So supply chain robotics, the adoption is largely driven by the burning issue of the lack of manpower availability, right? And that problem does not exist in India. And that is why there is a big challenge in adoption, because you always have the alternative of going to the easily available manpower, right? I'm not even talking economics. Economics is secondary. So that whole notion of having a burning problem which needs to be solved, that's still kind of coming. And I think the first time that burning problem was really felt was during the pandemic, where the supply chains got disrupted, right? And that's where players became more and more open to exploring how can you make your supply chain more resilient. And that has now got early movers, pioneers in their field, at least trying to figure out what can we do to make it more resilient. Now that's one. Now the second thing about supply chain robotics is it will never be adopted unless it makes economic sense, right? And that's the second problem with India, that our wages are actually the lowest in the world, I would say. If you leave Bangladesh aside, maybe Southeast Asia, no country is lower than India. Brazil is higher, China is higher. So that becomes the second problem, because at the end of the day, if you have a underlying hardware product, there is a cost to manufacture that, right? But even that is changing, because what is happening is on the supply side, the components are becoming cheaper as China kind of gets to scale, Taiwan gets to scale. And at the same time, I think the kind of efficiencies that customers are expecting from their supply chain assets, which is the warehouses, fulfillment center, is going high and high and high, largely driven by online fulfillment, quick commerce, and all of that, which after a point of time manually is not possible. So a human can do just so much, right? You can't really drive a human beyond a certain point, and which is fair. You can't really expect a person to be running around picking items throughout the day. So I guess there the economics then starts making sense, because what you can achieve using robotics from an overall asset utilization, etc. perspective is starting to make economic sense. Still not as strong a business case as you would see outside India, where you would get your payback within 1 year. Right? In India, probably you are talking 2.5, 3 years. But people are becoming more and more open to it. So if I say from a journey perspective, where would India be when you compare it to a global robotics adoption? I think we are still a few years behind. I'm sure wages will change and wages will increase, right? But that hockey stick in adoption would possibly come in a few years, but it has started. So yeah.
Great, yeah, totally. I think wages scenario with uh, skilled workers or even with startups coming and pulling in for delivery, it has become. Just to continue that a bit on your own startup journey, it's a core deep tech product.
Yeah.
There, the resources are not that plentiful or easy, but yeah, India of course is a hub of it. So how do you get your team started from beyond the founders? How do you scale that up? And how do you think is a deep tech talent crunch? So deep tech would essentially mean in the field of robotics with good manufacturing and that knowledge. How do you feel Indian talent, or how easy, difficult is it to get people on that?
So tackling the first question first, for us, I think we were lucky that we were able to get some of our early team members from networks. So when we were incorporated, within 1 month, we were from 2, we were 6 people. And these are the people who were earning way higher than what they were before, right? So obviously they were incentivized to ESOPs and all, but there was a lot of belief in what we were doing. So even now we are a fairly small team and a lean team, but we have been able to attract the right kind of talent. Now, coming to the question of how easy or difficult it has to be to kind of go beyond that core team who came on relationships, right? Super challenging. And I think from a timing perspective, also our talent attracting timing was not the best, because we were trying to attract talent in the last 1.5 years, right? And salaries have shot up through the roof. I think as a young startup, our resources are limited. So one was attracting based on the current ecosystem was difficult. Two is skill set. Now, India is actually, from a robotic skill set, developing fairly good pockets of skills. So Kerala is a great pocket. I think Pune has some very good engineers. In the north, two of the largest robotic companies which have come out of India, there are a lot of good engineers there. But having said that, I think the challenge of a young startup being able to attract those people still remained. So yeah, obviously not as plentiful as the US or maybe East Europe, but the talent is there. It's not like it's not there.
Yes, sir. I think we are fairly going ahead as well. Of course, with use cases like quick commerce, where humans can only reach a certain efficiency. So, on the front of getting more customers, what is some magic which has worked for you, or you think should work for companies in this robotics domain? Is it purely that you have to do some pilots, get the success there, and then go to next customers, or there are some other hacks around it as well? Getting new customers in this category of
So,
domain?
so for us, I think a young startup in robotics in fulfillment, right? Pilots are super important because I'm asking the customer to hand over one of the most critical parts of their overall fulfillment cycle. So unless these customers directly interact with their end consumers, who would go into social media for every small thing, right? So uh, to develop that confidence that actually we are the right people to do it, they have to see the solution in operation. The next set of customers, of course, you have a case study. So once my dark store is operational, I go to the next one, say reference checks, blah, 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 see my dark store running, right? But the first set of customers, you have to kind of go through the regular B2B pilot, etc. route. That's our experience.
And if you're, let's say, scaling out of India, if you have customers there, how do you, is it by going to that place and studying the problem statement more? Because supply chain is not that easily understood. It is, you understand it more when you are there. So in that phase, is it travel and going, or is it trying to read whatever documentation they have, or how is that process on
So
customers?
very relevant question. We are actually in that phase right now, where we are in conversations with customers in South Korea, US, UK, and Middle East. These four geographies, and Singapore. Sorry. We have read everything. Uh, I think you are absolutely right. Supply chain has nuances. One of the reasons that we eventually kind of moved into one of the learnings that we have from a previous use case, and so in our understanding, the dark store operations are possibly the most homogeneous that you can possibly find in supply chains globally, right? 2,500, 3,000, 3,500 square feet, manually operated, etc. But we are 100% sure there will be other nuances, the kind of assortment, the kind of goods handled, the kind of productivities, the kind of locations, the kind of roof heights, right? That is what we are right now trying to understand through our conversations, and we have got fairly good insights, fairly good interest. But for the final, I would say, adoption, sale, paid pilots and all that, we will have to go outside, because at the end of the day, the customer needs to, I think that needing to see you there and then kind of actually being there and figuring, in India we would have visited more than 20-25 dark stores, right, across players. That actual insight would come once you go to that dark store. So that will have to happen, but obviously all of these pre-preparations help in taking the conversation forward.
Yes. And so you have had, matlab, you started with the idea that you want to do robotics in supply chain efficiency. And it's largely around after 50% of starting up. If you're 2.5 years old, roughly after 1.5 year, you focused on dark stores. So in early stage, I have spoken to a lot of founders and leaders, and they try to get to many things like uh, getting one software to sold to many solutions, getting uh, robotics as supply chain sold across industries. Do you think that that helps, or you should be focused on just that one customer profile with one problem solution? Like, do you think that you should explore first where you're good at and then go here, or you should talk to customers and then directly land on your ICP?
So I think focus is very important, and it's largely because as a young startup, your resources and capabilities are limited. So what you can actually deliver within a certain period of time is limited, unlike a large player who can kind of set up 10 teams to do it, right? Having said that, what's very important is when you're at least what we realized is when we are identifying a particular use case or a particular problem statement, it has to be sizable enough, because uh, secondary research and a rapidly changing tech environment, uh, your competitive scenario in the world can change overnight. uh, or it won't change overnight, but the news will come out overnight. Because, for example, we started with a particular GTP system at the point, goods to person system, at the point which we were starting, in almost for 6-7 months we were possibly one of the 2-3 players globally who were planning to do something like that. We were still building up prototypes, but by the time we actually went for our pilots and all, two things happened. We realized that the solution which we are kind of building in India and we believe would work absolutely flawlessly outside wasn't true, because warehouses outside were way different than what they are in here, right? And the second thing which happened is some of the largest robotics players kind of launched products in exactly the same use case. So now, unless the market is big enough to have space for large companies, small companies in this particular use case, then it doesn't make sense. So I think along with focus, what's very important for a young startup like us is to find a use case which is sizable enough to accommodate multiple players.
How do you get to sizeability? Because let's say you get those 15, 20 customers initially through your networks, through identifying the problem statement directly. How do you think that this is something which would be used by 200 stores? So is there something on research which you did that, okay, uh, for example, if you talk about dark stores in India, yes, makes a lot of sense. But in US, it's not. I don't know. Like I've heard people telling that the 10-minute delivery system in US is like magic, what you have in India. So how do you come to the conclusion that, okay, this is something which can work for a bigger size, not only for an X size in your
So,
example?
from a industry perspective, right? When we were talking quick commerce, obviously it was based on both a bottom up and a top down approach. Bottom up is essentially what's the current market size which you see, right? If you look globally, how many dark stores are there? US obviously have many more dark stores than what are there in India, North America, LATAM, and there's a trend which is happening. And the top down then is what do you see experts, industry players, etc., saying would happen to quick commerce, right? Because quick commerce, we also don't believe that it will just remain as 10-minute delivery. I think it will be in a range which is 10 to 60 minutes, maybe even going to 2 hours. But the thing is, the fulfillment will happen from these dark stores, because these dark stores are what are close to you. So if you have to kind of give it in 10 minutes and you have to give it in 60 minutes, the service levels, the kind of delivery fees, etc., would change. But maybe you will not have 100 dark stores from the same brand in the city, but 20 dark stores, right? And we kind of took those into cognizance when we took. But we realized that the size of the market, at least in our humble opinion, is very large and going to increase further. If we saw that the market would remain a $1 or $2 billion total potential market, we would not have entered it. We see it as a much, much, much more larger market. And that is what kind of gave us the confidence to go ahead.
Yes. On the front of failures, some failures in across categories. If you could just name a few, and what are the solutions you tried which did not work
So
in your building journey?
I don't know if it, the example which I just took, right? So one is obviously we are a we are a solution which has a physical product to it. So for us, every iteration is not just expensive in terms of money, it's expensive in terms of time. So I think in our early 1 year, to be very fast, we maybe were not adequately detail oriented. Uh, because if we were, maybe we would have spent 1 more month additional than actually going into that particular use case which we just spoke about, right? That 1 more month would possibly have saved us 12 months of actually trying us something, or 6 months. So that was one thing which I felt that we could have done better. And right now, before going into the quick commerce segment, we actually took that time. We spoke to all the players who are there in the market to see if this is something, and also some players outside. We did it at that time also, but this time we kind of made sure that we have our gamut and really going deep into the use case. The second, a failure which I think would possibly happen in most startups, but we did go through a phase where we had to ask some people to leave. I still take that as a personal failure, because that again was uh, because of something that we said, let's go ahead in that direction. And then we did not continue in that direction. So there were some people who trusted us and then who joined us. But after a point of time, we kind of had to ask them to leave. So that I consider as a personal failure. I think apart from that, it's just learnings, right? Learnings of what can go right in fundraising, what can go wrong in fundraising, and all of that good stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, surely. I think people management itself is one of the biggest role. If done rightly, can give great results. And if we are a bit not let's say not wrong, but sometimes we try out things and they just don't work out. In your domain, what are uh, 3 to 4 magic things or magic words which you think are required in an organization to which you think will make it to success? Like, is it access to capital? Is it just great talent? Is a company with higher capital has higher chances to succeed? So, what are those 3 or 4 things which you feel that would make a company successful and maybe not let a lot of them survive?
So access to capital, definitely, and I think that's more to do with the fact that capital not just in terms of equity, right? It could also be debt, but debt these days comes along with equity and all of that, because as we scale, there is a capex part of the solution, which either becomes working capital or it becomes capex. But the scalability becomes very important there. Second is partnerships, because given we are a physical product, I think as we scale, we can't just serve our customers sitting here in India. We have to have local partnerships for maintaining the product and making sure that the outcomes are coming constantly. So partnerships with 3PLs, partnerships with system integrators becomes very important. So that's number two. I think talent obviously is there, so wouldn't deny it. And I think the fourth would be actually choosing the right geography. Because again, as I said, when I think about robotics and supply chain, right, it's a fairly crowded space. But there are pockets of white spaces, and these pockets of white spaces exist in use cases and in geographies. So for us, now we have identified a white space which we are really going after from a use case perspective. And it will not remain a white space for a very long time, right? There are already young companies who are kind of coming in, but it will still remain a white space for many geographies. So choosing the right geography to go after also becomes very important. For example, robotics in India is a white space and possibly will, as long as the economics work out, right? Similar case might be true for some geographies in Southeast Asia. Huge demand or huge need for robotics from a efficiency and fulfillment perspective in places like Indonesia, Thailand. Hardly any players servicing it, right? So if we can kind of service an unserved market in a cost-efficient way, I think as a young startup, we have huge scaling opportunity. So yeah.
Great. Yeah, finding geography which accepts your solution is it is a challenge, but if done successfully, it gives you higher return on your time, at least. Otherwise, there's a lot of time and effort wasted on wrong things. Just to conclude, and we have had a fairly insightful discussion on your domain, but something about you. So, why do you want to do what you're doing? Is it that is one first question, and second is people in this domain. What are some active exit opportunities? Is it what do you think that this industry has taken to? Is it profitability in itself? Because this is not let's say very high burning business. Do companies become large and become profitable, or what? So one part is why do you want to do this, what you're doing right now, and second part is for everyone in this industry or many new age companies, what are some exit opportunities in this field?
Yeah. So why I want to do it is I'll break it into two parts, right? One is I got started into entrepreneurship following my wife's lead. So she has always traveled the road less traveled, and she started her entrepreneurship journey before me. I kind of followed, right? So that got me started as an entrepreneur. So today we have two entrepreneurs in the same house, kind of discussing stuff. And now, why I need to continue it is I'm a person who really needs closure. So if I've started something, I need to take it to closure. My whole career has been defined by I need to do something which I like, and I really like entrepreneurship, right? So in my whole day, in my corporate career, I would possibly like 30% of the time and not like 70% of the time. I think in any career, if you like 50% of the stuff which you are doing, it's great. So as an entrepreneur, I like 50-60% of the stuff I'm doing. I still don't like actually sitting and paying salaries and all of that stuff. I wish it was automated in a better manner, but all of that is fine, right? So that's one. So I think that's the two-part answer to why I'm doing what I'm doing, and I see myself doing this for some time. Now, in terms of exiting, I know we already have reached the end of the time. I think usually the exits for large robotic companies have been through acquisitions. We see that strategic acquisitions, and that would one be either your customer segment acquiring you, or another robotic player kind of adding capabilities and acquiring you. That's what it has been till now. Having said that, some companies now lately have started looking at IPOs. AutoStore is a great example, right? So I think both those options are there where you are there, but I would say the acquisition route would be possibly the primary route for this category for some time.
Yes, and do you think there's good enough acquisition opportunities in India, or it's majorly Western-based companies doing that part?
Acquisition opportunities are in India and they are growing, right? The question is obviously valuation. So if you see lately, I think you would see so many strategic acquisitions which have happened in India. So Reliance kind of took a strategic investment in Adverb, and huge synergies, right? Then Delivery has made a strategic investment in Falcon Autotech. So you see that already happening in India also. The question obviously is what's the valuation, what state of life, and all of that stuff. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. I think Anurag, that will help a lot of people, especially in this domain. And I personally am very interested in these solutions being adopted at many places because, of course, wage and economics is one part, but the efficiency and value which can be created with robotics, if much investments is done into this, then there's huge potential where we can get the 10 minutes more efficiently, less faults, change commerce in a better way, even with courier or things like that. So always glad to get updated on this industry. And I think there are many people who like to know about robotics, even if they are not actively involved, because they just want to know that, okay, how can mechanical stuff be automated in any way. So great talking with you, Anurag. I think you guys are doing great stuff with dark stores. Of course, I didn't know about this before, but something really great.
Our website is still dated. We'll update it once in some time.
Yeah, and I think you will get these questions a lot on if you have been deep in this, the economics of the 10 minutes or 15-minute deliveries, because LinkedIn is filled with people calculating that this is the cost of delivery. This is the cost. So I think you'll have more insights on that.
Yeah, absolutely. We can really change the economics through our solution. But yeah, I think that's a longer unit economics breakdown question, right? So
yeah, great. So yeah, thank you so much for your time. And
thanks, Mohit. Thanks for having me here.
glad to come.
Great.